Welcome to Falcons Drip, your go-to source for Falcons news and draft coverage. I'm Thon, founder and voice of Falcons Drip.
Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm joined by my co-host Kyle, and we're going to go over a little mock draft. We're going to a live mock draft for you guys, where Kyle and I might be taking different players based on who's on the board, and we'll kind of go over who we're taking and why.
Okay, so this is gonna be a fun episode. Last episode we kind of did just one set mock that we talked about why those players would be good at fits in Atlanta, but we kind of wanted to do something live so we could show you like how we think about this board and how we pick players. So quickly going over who's already off the board. We got CJ Stroud off the board, Bryce Young off the board, Will Anderson off the board, Will Levis, Tyree Wilson, Christian Gonzalez, and Paris Johnson Jr. So the top player available is Jalen Carter, but as y'all know, there are some concerns off the field. So that's an interesting one. And I want to hear who else you have to mention for this pick.
And, just kind of looking at it, and we won't go over every single person that gets picked because for round one, it gets to be a little much. But just some other, like a direction we could go just for Atlanta. You obviously have Jalen Carter, Anthony Richardson still on the board. I know there's a lot of people he's very polarizing. So many people would be excited if we got him. So many people would be discouraged if we got him. And truthfully, no matter who Atlanta picks for me, there's very few people that would get drafted that I would be disheartened by. Bijan Robinson is available still, who I know a lot of people are another very polarizing player. Roderick Jones is definitely interesting. Devin Witherspoon, a lot of people have him as the CB1 instead of Christian Gonzalez. So like any of that direction, I think we could go. So I'll let you say kind of who you're leaning towards here.
I'm kind of leaning O-tackle or offensive tackle or edge. But personally, Jalen Carter kind of scares me, especially with the news coming out that a lot of teams are removing him from their boards due to the recent incidents with the reckless driving. Then you got the Missouri field incident, which he got the Missouri players stirred up and caused a fight. So I'm very concerned about him. So I think there's two options. There's trade back and maybe take like a Broderick Jones or like a Nolan Smith or whoever the best available player is, because I feel like there's enough talent that I like here that I feel is safer than Jalen Carter. So I'm in the field of trade back, get a couple more assets, and instead of hitching your wagon to this boom or bust type player.
So let's just say, just for the sake of the mock, no trades are available. We're calling around, trying to trade back, and nobody's biting. So who are you taking here at 8?
If no one's calling, I feel like Jalen Carter might be the best pick here just because of the talent, but it is a risky move.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, he's debatably the best player in this draft class.
Who would be your guy?
So I know a lot of people, same thing, are clamoring for a trade back, and I'm actually thinking that we're going to need to stay at 8 if we want to draft this player. I've talked about him a little bit, and that's Nolan Smith. So another UGA defensive lineman. Statistically, like I know everyone's like, oh, he's small, that's a reach, but in the combine, I mean, he was in the 99th percentile of so many different things. He's just a freak athlete. I know he's a little undersized, and I know that people talk about his, ability to pass rush as not being refined. And that's so many players. But when you look at it, what he's asked to do at Georgia was stop the run first. That was the main focus. He was really never allowed to just kind of pin his ears back and just go. And even with that, if you're looking across the board of like some of the elite edge rushers in the past, let's just say since 2020, last couple of years, his run stop rate is at 16.3%. So that means his ability to make stops in the run. And so like 16% of the time, he's the one making the tackle that he's out there. And his pressure rate, which is I think is very, very underrated in the NFL, and like looking at it, is at 16.3. Just to compare that, the pressure rate, the 16.3 would be the second most in this class, the just behind Will Anderson, who's at 16.9. Some other people just to throw out there, just to kind of put it in perspective in the last few years, Chase Young was at 16.9. Thibodeau is at 14.2. Trayvon Walker was at 8.8, and Aiden Hutchinson was at 13.3. So, I mean, he is right up there with all of the other edge players as far as pressure rates go. So that's per snap, per how much, like the percentage of him getting pressure on the quarterback. And that is that's with being asked, okay, you need to stop the run first. So,
And I think he's not that crazy undersized, because if he adds like 10 to 15 pounds, he's pretty decent size for an edge. Obviously he wouldn't be more of like that hand in the dirt type edge rusher. He'd be more of that outside linebacker who drops back in coverage some and sometimes goes to rush the passer, but not always. I think he's more of like a mostly pass rusher, like drop back for a few snaps per game.
And also too, that percentage of pressure rate, that's in the SEC. I mean, those are the best offensive linemen in college football. So
For sure, it's got the best competition. If you like, the only team that you could say doesn't have the best competition is like the Vandies and the Floridas. Maybe you could make a case those aren't great competition. But if you look throughout the league, the overall league, the talent is much better than most leagues.
yeah, and also too, I mean, one thing I'll throw in is, and I mentioned this on Twitter and on Instagram, like if you look at what this regime prioritizes more than anything else, that's the mental makeup of players, and nobody has a better mental makeup in this entire draft class at any position than Nolan Smith.
I mean, look at how important he was to Georgia after going down with a season-ending injury. They were taking him in everywhere, to all the games and taking up one of their roster spots when that could have been used for maybe a special teams depth piece. And instead, they were like, "We want you on this trip because you're more important as a coach, for us." So
Coach and a
I say
leader.
let's go Nolan Smith.
Hmm.
Even though it might be a little bit of reach, I think it's one of the better picks you could make here.
And I think that the draft community has not caught up to where the NFL is on Nolan Smith. Like I legitimately could see him going as high as 6 to to the Lions. And I also too, like, people want to trade back if he's there at 8. I could very easily see the 2 picks later him going to the Eagles. So
For sure. So
if he's your
I'm
guy,
excited to see what our next pick will be.
yeah, for
And
sure.
maybe like in the 40s
Before we
in
pick at
the
45.
second. Yes. So that's that's almost like a first rounder. So we should be able to get someone pretty good here.
And my thought process too, I think 44 because of the missed because of the uh pick that got taken away from the Dolphins. But my philosophy here is like it doesn't matter who is like it doesn't matter what the position, you go best player available. Um and that's
Um,
different for everybody. So all right, why don't you kind of tell us who's there a little bit?
Okay, so I'll name you two players right here. I'm looking at the board and I see Keon White on the board, and I see Will McDonald the fourth out of Iowa State and Keon White out of Georgia Tech. Those are two of the top, some of the better pass rushers in this draft class, and they're guys who have had first round buzz at points. Keon White with some mocks mocking him in the 20s, and Will McDonald, I've seen him mocked in like the 30s at like 32 in some mocks.
Hmm.
So those are two exciting players, which I their stock has just been rising throughout the whole draft process. They went from being maybe late day 2 picks to maybe day 1 picks.
You want to look at a couple of the other players that are there, maybe that are not edge players?
Yeah, I'll look at Cedric Tillman. He would help fill out this
Mm,
wide receiver room. He's a great player. He's a big body receiver, which kind of fits the Falcons scheme.
hmm
I'll also look at a linebacker like a Jack Campbell
hmm
out of Iowa, a Drew Sanders out of Arkansas. Two solid players, nothing crazy. But for picking here, it's as solid as you can get.
Yeah, I think if we felt like we needed another linebacker, which I don't with the address or the bring signing on Ellis. I think we're totally fine at linebacker. Maybe go get another cheap option. Um,
I'm
bring
thinking we
Black,
address that maybe day 3 and get it
yeah,
on just for depth.
yeah, or bring back oh, I'm drawing a blank now. 54. He led in
Yeah, bring
tackles
back
last year.
Rashawn Evans. Okay,
Bring
I
back
like
Rashaan
that.
Evans. We don't need to, and we don't need to waste the draft capital. And you, I mean, everybody knows I take Keon White anytime he's available to me in the second round. I take him. Um, and the reason why I would lean towards him over some of these other positions, I think this is such a deep class of, I think it's such a deep class of wide receivers that I really like. And as far as like Keon White versus Will McDonald, I think we took a guy that's more of an outside linebacker in Nolan Smith, so it's kind of the um, lighter outside guy, where Keon White gives you that inside outside versatility.
Mhm.
Um, and he's more of the kind of guy that Nielsen likes, the bigger, fat, bigger athletic, um, just type of players that can play rush from the wide nine, can rush from, a three tech. He can kind of be moved all over the field. Um, I'll say this too, just talking about the pressure rates. Keon White had a 14.5, and Will McDonald had a 14.7. So both right there, both of them ahead of a guy like Aiden Hutchinson and also Thibodeau. Both of them outperform them as far as pressure rate goes. So,
Yeah, for sure. I definitely love that pick. So with that, we'll move. I think we're both in agreement. We pick him.
mhm.
So with that, we'll move on to our next pick. And I just want to point out, I'll point out two guys that I like. I'm gonna point out Devin Achane. He's this speedy back
Mm.
out of Texas A&M. He did it all for them. Texas A&M didn't have the greatest quarterback situation, so he was their whole offense at times, and he looked great doing it. Teams knew they were running, and he'd still make big plays and make great plays. And I also want to point out Kayshon Boutte. He's one of the better wide receivers in college football. And he's one of the guys that I think can be a wide receiver 2, maybe wide receiver 1 on some teams in the future, and if he develops like he should.
I was all for Tayshaun until the combine, where he just literally, I mean, he was horrible. Like, his numbers were just terrible, and I've pretty much been all out on him since then. But he does look, I mean, his tape looks, he like a so much different athlete than what he showed at the combine. Um,
But
the only
I want to point out another LSU receiver who had an awful combine,
hmm
turned out to be a great NFL receiver, and that's Jarvis Landry.
hmm that's
So
true.
sometimes combine is just something that you look bad, but the player is actually really good. So sometimes it's good to take a chance on a player who has a really bad combine and you're unsure about them after it.
That's true. And another person who's available too, but I don't think will be, is Julius Brents, the cornerback out of Kansas State. I don't know if he definitely won't make it out of round two. I doubt he probably goes in round one. And we were just talking about a 6'4" cornerback with just really freaky long arms. He's also, 200 pounds and ran a 4.53, which at 6'4" is really fast. He also had a
Mhm.
41.5-inch vertical and an 11.6 broad jump. So I mean, he's just, he's perfect for that cover three scheme. But I
Mhm.
don't know if he'll necessarily be there for us to take. Not that we were going to run cover three. So another couple of people that I do like here too. is either Caillou Blue Kelly, who's the cornerback out of Stanford. I think he's great. Matthew Bergeron, the offensive tackle um, out of Syracuse, I think is also an awesome pick here. I think he's also a round 2 player. Tyler Scott, the Cincinnati wide receiver, could be great. He's got speed for days and the connection he already has with Ritter. A.T. Perry, a different type of receiver, more of like your outside kind of guy. And then a sleeper pick here who probably found his way into the 3rd round is the Pittsburgh running back, Israel Ebenikanda. I'm not sure if I'm saying that
I
right,
think it's
but I mean,
Abanikander.
I have no clue how to say it, so I'm just going to call him Izzy. So, I mean, Izzy wasn't able to run at the combine, but absolutely tore it up at the pro day. Some scouts recording him with in the 4.3s, 4.2s. Just a freak athlete.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely love those guys. Um, I think any one of them would be a great pick here, but I wanna see who you're leaning to.
Um, I think here I either want to go with I would take, if available, I would take Julius Brents, but I'm going to pretend like he's not available because I think I think he's going to be gone by now. So I lean more towards either. I also would take Bergeron, but I think he will also be gone. I think he's definitely gone in the 2nd round. Um, so I lean towards like an A.T. Perry or a Tyler Scott just to give us another weapon on the outside because we do have. I mean, we did sign um, Hollins and Scotty Miller, but I just think they're both there on 1-year deals. So maybe let's bring in whichever we want, either the other guy outside of the other outside guy in A.T. Perry, or maybe bring in the slot and Tyler Scott. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, well, A-Chain might be one of my favorite prospects in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
We do need both wide receiver and corner, and I mean wide receiver and running back.
Yeah.
But I think there's enough running backs in this draft that I like
Mm-hmm.
to go and get a solid receiver. So
I
I'm
would.
gonna have to agree with you with Tyler Scott because it fits the mold of a Falcons type receiver.
I'm
And
also,
overall, he's got that connection with Ritter, which makes it make a lot of sense.
but also too, like if you're gonna say that we're gonna run the ball, you know, let's say 40 times a game, I'm totally fine taking a running back in the 3rd round, especially if they're the type of athlete the Pittsburgh running back is. Um, me personally, I agree. I like taking running backs later. Um, and another direction we could go would be some of the offensive linemen, like
Mhm.
Luke Whippler out of Ohio State or the Wisconsin center. Both of those guys, I think, are pretty solid, especially in 3rd round picks, just to compete with um, some of the interior guys that we have. Because right now we do have a little bit of a gap at left guard.
Okay, we're back up. And the TCU running back still there, Kendre Miller.
Mm,
That's intriguing. You also got Zach Pickens, a defensive tackle out of South Carolina. I'm gonna scroll down.
hmm
Jonathan Mingo, I've really liked the wide
mm,
receiver out of Ole Miss. There's a lot of guys I think are pretty good here. You
hmm
also got Hodges Tomlin, who's been mentioned for the Falcons at one point. So I think there's a lot of ways you could go here.
Absolutely. And just kind of looking at it, um, I really like here either going with um, Tyler Steen, the offensive tackle out of Alabama, or Jonathan Mingo. I think and we're gonna have 2 picks like back to back. So just kind of looking at it, I think I would go um, Tyler Steen first, and then in 3 picks, hopefully Jonathan Mingo's that still there to kind of solidify our receiver core. Like, so let's talk about Tyler Steen first. I think in Alabama, he's a massive, massive player. I think he's like 6'6", 215, 225. and he shows he's got like nimble feet and he's able to move around really well. And where he's kind of struggled is when he gets bull rushed sometimes. He's had a hard time anchoring down, but he's shown he has the strength to do it. It just seems like he needs a little bit of technique worked on, and he could be a very legitimate starting NFL offensive tackle. And I think he could be the perfect guy to sit behind either Jake Matthews for a couple years until Jake leaves, or possibly even bump over to right tackle if McGarry leaves in 2 or 3 years.
I personally love that pick, so let's go and do it. And then we'll move on to 113. And I've just been in love with Mingo as a pick. In the fourth round, I think he's a solid big body receiver. And I think he's perfect for the Falcons because at the very least, he's a capable blocker who can maybe get 20 receptions for maybe 200 yards in his first season.
And he's like the perfect wide receiver in Arthur Smith's scheme, right? I mean, I know they both went to Ole Miss. They both wore number 1, but I feel like they were he just screams AJ Brown to me. And like when you compare their RAS scores, if you look at like all this, like statistically, Mingo is a bigger Fatty Brown. AJ Brown is definitely more polished as a route runner. He's definitely more polished just as a player in general. But when you're looking at like their 40 times, if you're looking at their verticals and kind of see what they did at the combine, Mingo beats AJ Brown in almost every single category, just barely.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely love it because it's a talented receiver who's got the body and frame for an Arthur Smith run offense. He's absolutely perfect. He's like the prototypical receiver in Arthur Smith's scheme. So I think that's absolutely what you need. You're just looking for a guy that can be that prototypical frame and has some room to grow to maybe become a better receiver than where he's drafted and be maybe like first round value. I'm looking at the draft board and I see Spears here, Tajee Spears, the running back out of Tulane, and I think that has to be the pick here.
Yeah, so we're at pick 159 in the 5th round. If he falls, I love the later picks and running backs. Let's just kind of look and see who else is available.
Yeah, I'll scroll a little bit. There's Roshan Johnson.
Roshan Johnson.
I butchered that name.
That's okay.
Ryan Moss is intriguing.
Roshan Johnson I think would be a great pick. He's, to me, more similar to what we have in Tyler Algier. So if we're looking to it, kind of like if we took either of those guys, I think it'd be good because if we're looking to kind of repeat that, like that same run style, then he's the guy to take. But if we're looking kind of like for more of like a thunder and lightning, kind of a scat back to take over from when CP moves on, then Tajee Spears is the guy. I personally like Tajee Spears. He's probably my 3rd or 4th ranked running back in this class. So if we can get him at 159, like I'm totally down. Just some other directions we can go. There's a couple good cornerbacks, not good, but for 5th round, good.
Taking 5th round, good.
Yeah, taking some interior defensive linemen are good. So this is a really deep tight end class. I know we don't need a tight end because we just brought in Jonnu Smith. We just re-signed Parker Hussey. We drafted Fitzpatrick last year, but Arthur Smith loves his tight ends, and I would not be shocked to see him take one in the draft this year.
I think we're both in agreement that we take Tajee Spears, arguably the best late round running back you can get.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, he's just flown up draft boards.
Okay, so I believe our next pick is a 7th round pick.
Yep, we've got 2 7ths.
Okay, so we'll quickly go through those.
So, like, one of the other cornerbacks that we could take there, who we didn't really talk about, was Rajon Wright, the cornerback at Oregon State. Just long, athletic, freaky kind of traits. Also, too, a quarterback we could have taken is Dorian Thompson-Robinson out of UCLA. He's shown the ability to have really good, arm strength and ability with the ball in his hands, but has been very inconsistent and kind of small. So that's kind of why he's falling, and could be a project type quarterback. If we wanted to have a guy maybe to work on if Ridder isn't the guy. I do think Ridder is the guy, but just in case that was a direction we could go, 5th round value for him, I think, is pretty good. So
I really like that idea. So with this, we'll move on to our 7th round pick. I see Max Duggan on the board, and it's really tempting to take the TCU quarterback. He's got the traits for a good quarterback. He's very competitive. He's got the fight. He's a player that even if his team isn't playing well, he'll like will them to victory. I know he didn't win the Kansas State versus Kansas State in the conference championship, but how he played that game, it was like there was no way you could keep him from losing. It felt like he was going to win that game by putting TCU on his back, but unfortunately he wasn't able to quite get it done with his teammates and the whole team having a rough game.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. His 7th round value for Max Duggan is awesome. I probably wouldn't take him any sooner, maybe round 5, but I think that's a great value. There's a lot of good running backs still available if we didn't just take one. There's also some, this is the kind of time where you just take shots on some late round flyers.
Okay, so we stopped recording for a bit so we could talk about these 7th round picks because we weren't really sure who to take. And then after looking for a minute, we came across this former UGA corner. And y'all know I'm a big UGA fan. I love the Dogs. So I was talking about Amir Speed, and I was looking at some of his pro day stuff. And one thing that stands out is he's this 6'3", 210-pound corner that runs a 4.34 40. So I think that's just insane. And I think he's perfect for a guy you take as a developmental prospect and hoping you can maybe get some more out of him. Because he's got all the intangibles and all the things you want in a guy to be a quality corner. So I personally love him as a prospect.
And when you're taking guys in the 7th round, you're kind of looking at it 2 different ways, right? Like you want to either take these freak athletes, which Amir Speed is, and hope you can develop him into something. In worst case scenario, you've got a great special teams guy. Or you want to take these guys who maybe have really poor athletic traits that dominated in college and kind of hope that they're able to turn it around and play, just be able to not turn around, but to be able to play at a higher level, even with poor testing numbers.
Yeah, and he doesn't have poor testing numbers. He just doesn't have the on-field production to be the guy yet. He showed it in some games where, as a Georgia fan, when I remember watching him, he would be this insanely athletic and insanely big player out there, but he personally just didn't have the mental part of the game down, it seemed like. So if you could develop like some of that technique and mental stuff, I think he could be a great corner.
Absolutely. I think that's the direction you go. Like I said, when you're looking here, like that's kind of the direction, right? You going either super athletic and, like I said, worst case scenario, you have a great special teams guy.
Yeah, for sure. And next, I know you love Xavier Land from FAU. So
it's a Xavier Smith out of
Xavier Smith. I always get those two confused. They got the Land dude.
Yeah.
The edge rusher.
Edge rusher. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
really good
good
too. But
edge rusher. I mistaked it for a second, but
I
it's a smaller, quicker receiver that I personally love. Or if you want to take a receiver, you could take like a Matt Landers
mhm.
who ran a 4.37 40 and he's 6'4", fits that prototypical build for the Falcons. So I want to know what you want to do here. Do we go defense or do we go receiver and go like a Landers or an Xavier Smith?
Like everything about me says like we need to take like another defensive back, but I just cannot get away from Xavier Smith. Just like watching him play, it's just like to me he looks like he belongs on the NFL field. He ran in the 4.3s with a 37-inch vertical. He is undersized, but he's so shifty and quick, and his hands and body control also seem to be just great from what I've seen. And he's able to win in routes on all phases of the field. She's able to catch short routes and get first downs that way. He's able to, do breaking in and breaking out medium routes and also the deep ball and be able to track the ball. Sometimes he does lose the ball um, when he's going deep. I think that's kind of his bigger issue. But that being said, I think once he gets on the same page with a NFL coach and a quarterback, I think the sky's the limit for him. And so I love, we had some serious speed with him and Tyler Scott in the slot and possibly Mingo. I mean, our receiving core of Mingo, Xavier Smith, Tyler Scott, and Drake London for years to come would be very formidable. So that's kind of where I go.
Yeah, I personally like it. Um, I'm down for that or Landers. So we're going Xavier Smith.
So just to kind of go through this co-op mock draft that we did, just going from top to bottom. At 8, we took Nolan Smith. I know a lot of people will see that as a reach, but I don't think either of us particularly do. And I think by the time the NFL draft rolls around in a month, I think that no one will be shocked to see him. Maybe people will. I don't think people will be shocked when he goes in the top 10, top 12 picks. Keon White, again, we're solidifying our edge rush and our ability to get to the quarterback. I mean, he'll kind of probably take over for Calais Campbell. Once Calais Campbell either retires or leaves Atlanta, he'll kind of be the next man up. Tyler Scott, the speedy receiver at 75. Tyler Steen, the offensive lineman out of Alabama, who has a ton of potential. And the 4th round, and right after him, Jonathan Mingo to kind of get that next X receiver or Z receiver, the outside guy. He can also play in the slot too, but what he does after the catch is really what's amazing. Then Tajay Spears to complement Tyler Algier in the 5th round. And then our 2 7th round guys, Amir Speed with just freaky athletic traits. And then Xavier Smith, another slot receiver who can really do it all.
Yeah, but you could also go on the other end of the spectrum with a bigger receiver like Landers or any other developmental big receiver, but we ended up agreeing to go Xavier Smith for this one.
And if you guys have not watched tape on him, please do. Like I keep saying this to everybody, and I can't get my mind off him. Like he's just, as a late round guy, he's exactly what I want to kind of go after in the later round. So
I want to key in on speed. I didn't think I'd be talking about him as a late round, like 7th round pick. But after the pro day he had, he seems like a steal if you can get those all those traits and all the technique ironed out. He will be a solid cornerback in the league if those get ironed out because he has the physical tools, the speed, the prototypical body to be a great outside NFL corner.
worst case scenario, maybe he ends up being a a cornerback 6, a cornerback 5, and he's great on special teams.
For sure. I think he's like the perfect guy to be like a gunner, at the very least.
Yeah, that for
Punt
sure.
team.
So
So
guys,
that wraps up our mock draft.
and And so, guys, so for next week's episode, Kyle and I are going to kind of dive in, and we're going to have a special guest on, Daniel Flick. He works for Sports Illustrated, and he does a lot of Falcons work. He's a Falcons writer. You know, you'll see him, and I'm sure we've both shared some of his stuff online. So I hope you guys will look forward to that and tune in.
And I also want to mention before we go that we want to get the listeners more involved with the podcast. So we're thinking about doing maybe some Twitter shows, but we're still trying to figure out the details on that. So hopefully at some point we're able to do something like that. So I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a great day.
Again, this is Thon Ray. You guys can follow us at Falcons_drip on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Please make sure you subscribe, follow, whatever you need to do to get the alert for our next episode. If you guys enjoyed today, please leave us a review. It always helps us grow. Until then, see you next time. Rise up.